This is Low-Light Trivia. Geography, 53 questions. There's no timer and nothing to keep up with. Each question gets a pause, then the answer, then a little more about it. If you fall asleep before the end, that's the idea. If you'd like more of these, subscribing helps. That's the last thing I'll ask of you tonight. This program is read by a synthetic, AI-generated voice. Every answer comes from a cited source, checked by a person. Let's begin. Whose visit to the Galapagos in 1835 inspired a landmark theory of evolution by natural selection? A. Joseph Banks. B. Charles Darwin. C. Alexander von Humboldt. D. Alfred Russel Wallace. The answer is Charles Darwin. Charles Darwin's observations of the island's unusual wildlife, including finches and giant tortoises that varied from island to island, helped shape his theory of evolution by natural selection. The isolation of the archipelago meant species developed independently, giving him a natural experiment in how environment can drive change over generations. What type of rock mainly makes up Mount McKinley, giving the peak much of its resistance to erosion? A. Basalt. B. Limestone. C. Granite. D. Schist. The answer is granite. Mount McKinley's mass formed deep underground as part of a granite batholith, then slowly rose toward the surface because granite is lighter than the surrounding rock. Because granite also resists erosion so well, the peak keeps gaining height faster than wind, water, and ice can wear it down, which helps explain why it towers so far above its base compared with many other mountains. What is the longest mountain range on Earth? A. The Himalayan Range. B. The Andes Range. C. The Mid-Ocean Ridge. D. The Rocky Mountains. The answer is the Mid-Ocean Ridge. Most of this range lies hidden beneath the sea, so it is easy to overlook beside the famous ranges on land. It forms where tectonic plates pull apart and magma rises to create new seafloor, which also makes it the largest single volcanic feature on the planet. What letter shape does a river typically carve into a mountain valley, in contrast to the broader U shape left by a glacier? A. S shape. B. L shape. C. W shape. D. V shape. The answer is V-shape. Rivers and glaciers erode rock differently because of how the ice and water move. A river's flow is concentrated in a narrow channel, cutting a sharp V-shaped notch. A glacier, by contrast, is a wide mass of ice scraping along its entire base and sides, which grinds out a broad, flat-bottomed U-shaped trough with steep walls, visible today at lakes like Lake McDonald. What distinguishes the water of the Xingu River from the Amazon's whitewater tributaries? A. It carries thick, nutrient-rich sediment. B. It is crystal clear and carries little sediment. C. It is heavily silted and murky. D. It is brackish for most of its length. The answer is, it is crystal clear and carries little sediment. Amazon tributaries fall into distinct water types, with whitewater rivers carrying heavy sediment loads, while others, like the Xingu, run clear. That clarity shapes life on the riverbed. Fish, such as the zebra pleco, depend on rock and sand for cover, because murky water is not there to hide them. How many islands make up the Galapagos archipelago, described as a living museum of evolution? A. 17. B. 19. C. 21. D. 23. The answer is 19. The Galapagos are made up of 19 islands together with a large surrounding marine reserve. Their isolation in the Pacific Ocean, far from any continent, allowed unusual species such as giant tortoises and land iguanas to evolve in ways found nowhere else, which is part of why the islands are considered such an important natural laboratory. Which explorer surveyed the island of South Georgia in 1775? A. Ernest Shackleton. B. Charles Darwin. C. James Cook. D. James Clark Ross. The answer is James Cook. South Georgia's rat problem arrived after Cook's era, carried ashore by sealers and whalers. The island was once among the richest seabird breeding sites anywhere, and conservationists have treated the state Cook found as a benchmark for what restoration might recover. About how long has the Colorado River been cutting downward to carve the Grand Canyon? A. 5 to 6 million years. B. 30 to 35 million years. C. 70 to 30 million years. D. 2 billion years. The answer is 5 to 6 million years. The canyon itself is geologically young compared to the rock it cuts through. The oldest exposed rock formed almost 2 billion years ago, and even the youngest layer at the rim is around 270 million years old, yet the river only began downcutting 5 to 6 million years ago, making the canyon far younger than the stone it exposed. Which two volcanoes does Hawaii Volcanoes National Park protect? A. Kilauea and Mauna Loa. B. Kohala and Haleakala. C. Mauna Kea and Hualalai. D. Mount Waialeale and Kilauea. The answer is Kilauea and Mauna Loa. These two volcanoes represent some of the most active on the planet, and the park was created specifically to allow their study while preserving surrounding native ecosystems and Hawaiian cultural sites. Their ongoing eruptions and lava flows continue to reshape the island's landscape, making the park a living laboratory for volcanic processes. Which three mountain ranges were created when the Rhine Rift Valley sank between Basel and Mainz? A. The Alps, the Vosges, and the Jura. B. The Odenwald, the Harz, and the Black Forest. C. The Vosges, the Black Forest, and the Odenwald. D. The Vosges, the Jura, and the Rhenish Slate Mountains. The answer is the Vosges, the Black Forest, and the Odenwald. The three ranges were once a single connected highland. It split apart when the Rhine Valley between Basel and Mainz dropped along fault lines, leaving the ground on either side standing high. It is Rift Valley mountain building, quite distinct from folding. Which river fed the Hamoon wetlands on the border of Afghanistan and Iran? A. The Amu Darya. B. The Indus River. C. The Helmand River. D. The Tigris River. The answer is the Helmand River. The Hamoon wetlands formed an inland delta where the Helmand spread out across the arid plains of Central Asia, a rare oasis of marsh and lake supporting fish, otters, leopards, and migrating birds. Drought and expanding irrigation collapsed the wetlands into salt flats within just a few decades. How thick a layer of ash from the Minoan eruption settled on eastern Crete? A. Up to 5 centimeters. B. Up to 50 centimeters. C. Up to 1 meter. D. Up to 10 centimeters. The answer is up to 5 centimeters. Deep-sea sediment cores let researchers trace the ash far beyond Santorini itself. Even at the distance of eastern Crete, a measurable layer would have settled, evidence used to reconstruct how far the eruption reached and how violent it was. How many eggs may a single female Couch's spadefoot toad lay? A. As many as 3,000. B. As many as 300. C. As many as 30,000. D. As many as 300,000. The answer is as many as 3,000 eggs. Couch's spadefoot breeds in temporary desert pools that can vanish within days, so laying in enormous numbers improves the odds that some survive to become froglets. The eggs hatch remarkably fast in warm water, and the tadpoles must race through metamorphosis before the pool dries out. Who led the first river expedition through Grand Canyon in 1869, through what was then called the Great Unknown? A. John Strong Newberry. B. John Wesley Powell. C. G. K. Gilbert. D. Clarence Dutton. The answer is John Wesley Powell. Powell was a geologist and ethnologist whose river journey through the canyon became a foundational moment in American geoscience. He later gave the Great Unconformity its name, describing the missing time recorded between rock layers. His expedition helped establish Grand Canyon as a premier site for geologic research that continues today. Which river carved out the Grand Canyon? A. Rio Grande. B. San Juan River. C. Green River. D. Colorado River. The answer is Colorado River. The canyon was cut by the Colorado River as it eroded through rock that had been uplifted over millions of years. This slow process exposed layer after layer of ancient stone, turning the canyon into a natural cross-section of Earth's crust. The same river's flow has since been altered by the Glen Canyon Dam, which changed the sediment and habitat conditions downstream. Titan's mountain ranges are named after mountains from which fictional setting? A. Middle-earth, from J.R.R. Tolkien's works. B. Narnia, from C.S. Lewis's novels. C. Westeros, from George R.R. Martin's novels. D. Arrakis, from Frank Herbert's Dune. The answer is Middle-earth, from J.R.R. Tolkien's works. Mithrim Montez takes its name from the Mithrim Mountains in Tolkien's writing. Planetary nomenclature often groups the features of one world under a shared theme drawn from literature, mythology, or the history of exploration, which is how a Saturnian moon came to carry elvish place names. On a barrier island, what typically forms on the shore-facing side rather than the ocean-facing side? A. Marshes, tidal flats and maritime forests. B. Sand dunes and open beaches. C. Coral reefs and rocky tide pools. D. Freshwater lakes and glacial deposits. The answer is marshes, tidal flats, and maritime forests. A barrier island has two faces shaped by different forces. The ocean side absorbs wave energy and builds beaches and dunes, while the calmer landward side develops marshes, tidal flats, and forest. Those sheltered habitats matter to seabirds, fish, shellfish, and nesting turtles, making the islands ecological buffers as well as physical ones. Which rock formation is the youngest layer at Grand Canyon, forming both the north and south rims? A. Redwall limestone. B. Vishnu basement rocks. C. Kaibab formation. D. Grand Canyon supergroup. The answer is Kaibab formation. Sitting atop the canyon's layered rock sequence, this formation was laid down long before dinosaurs existed. Its position at the very top of the exposed strata makes it the youngest visible rock unit, while far older rocks lie thousands of feet below at the canyon floor, illustrating just how much time separates the rim from the river. What is a barrier island? A. A permanent rock formation that never shifts once created. B. A coral reef structure growing outward from the shoreline. C. A man-made bank built to redirect river sediment. D. A constantly changing deposit of sand that forms parallel to the coast. The answer is a constantly changing deposit of sand that forms parallel to the coast. Barrier islands are dynamic landforms, not fixed ones. They build up from sediment carried by waves and keep shifting with changing wind and wave patterns. Because of that constant motion, they can grow, erode, or vanish entirely, which is why coastal maps of places like the Outer Banks change from decade to decade. Roughly, how long ago did New Zealand separate from Australia? A. 40 million years ago. B. 160 million years ago. C. 20 million years ago. D. 80 million years ago. The answer is 80 million years ago. That ancient isolation is why New Zealand had no native land mammals before people arrived, leaving birds, insects, and even snails to evolve into roles mammals fill elsewhere. The flightless kiwi and the oversized carnivorous Paulephantus snail. Where does the Mont Saint-Michel rank among the most visited monuments in France? A. Second. B. First. C. Third. D. Fourth. The answer is second. Despite its remote island setting, the Abbey draws immense crowds, sitting just behind the single most visited site in the country. That popularity is why visitors are steered towards early mornings and evenings on the ramparts rather than the middle of a summer day. What is the typical annual rainfall range for most desert or arid climates? A. Between 50 and 300 millimeters. B. Between 10 and 100 millimeters. C. Between 25 and 200 millimeters. D. Between 100 and 500 millimeters. The answer is between 25 and 200 millimeters. Most arid regions receive rainfall within that modest band, though some hot areas, such as parts of Central Australia and the Sahel, count as arid despite higher rainfall because evaporation outstrips what falls. Aridity depends on the balance between rain and evaporation, not on rainfall alone. What is a tuya? A. A flat-topped mesa carved by wind in a desert basin. B. A steep volcanic cone formed entirely underwater. C. A flat-topped volcano that erupted through a glacier. D. A broad shield volcano built from thin basalt flows. The answer is a flat-topped volcano that erupted through a glacier. The name comes from Tuya Lake and Tuya River in northern British Columbia, where the classic examples stand. The flat top and steep sides form because lava erupting inside a glacier melts a lake of water, which then confines and shapes the growing pile until it breaks the ice surface. How far back does the geological history revealed by the canyon's horizontal strata extend? A. 1 billion years. B. 500 million years. C. 4 billion years. D. 2 billion years. The answer is 2 billion years. The exposed rock layers in the canyon walls record roughly 2 billion years of Earth's geological past, capturing evidence from 4 major geologic eras. Because the Colorado River cut downward through already uplifted crust, older rock lies at the bottom of the canyon, while younger layers sit near the rim, letting visitors read Earth's history simply by looking from top to bottom. How does the power capacity of the Belo Monte Dam compare with that of the Hoover Dam? A. About half as much. B. More than 5 times greater. C. Roughly 3 times greater. D. Nearly 10 times greater. The answer is more than 5 times greater. Belo Monte sits on the Xingu River in Pará, Brazil, and its capacity dwarfs one of the world's most famous hydroelectric dams. The comparison conveys the scale of the project and why researchers raced to document the river's fish before construction altered it. In what year was the first Ordnance Survey map published? A. 1791. B. 1801. C. 1841. D. 1861. The answer is 1801. Although mapping of Great Britain began with that first printed sheet, coverage of the whole country took decades longer. In many areas, the earliest detailed large-scale Ordnance Survey map did not appear until the 1860s, 70s, or 80s, showing how gradual the project of mapping an entire nation in fine detail actually was. How many people were killed in the May 18, 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens? A. 61. B. 72. C. 57. D. 43. The answer is 57. The eruption combined a massive landslide, a lateral blast of superheated gas, and fast-moving mud flows, and together these forces claimed 57 lives. Many victims were caught outside the official restricted zone, since the blast traveled far faster and farther than scientists had anticipated, a lesson that later reshaped how hazard zones are drawn around active volcanoes. In what year did the rally, now called the Dakar Rally, begin, running from Paris to Dakar? A. 1978. B. 1982. C. 1992. D. 1965. The answer is 1978. The race set out from the Trocadero in Paris on Christmas Day, bound for the Senegalese capital across desert terrain. The route changed repeatedly over the following decades, and the event eventually left Africa altogether, first for South America, later for Saudi Arabia, while keeping its original name. About how tall was Mount Mazama estimated to be before it collapsed? A. 8,000 feet. B. 12,000 feet. C. 15,000 feet. D. 10,000 feet. The answer is 12,000 feet. Before its collapse, Mount Mazama stood among the tallest peaks in the Cascade Range. A rapid series of explosive eruptions, roughly 7,700 years ago, emptied the volcano's interior, causing the structure to collapse inward and leave behind the caldera basin that later filled with water to form Crater Lake. In what year did British Antarctic Survey scientists discover the Antarctic ozone hole? A. 1959. B. 1985. C. 1991. D. 1987. The answer is 1985. The discovery of the ozone hole prompted swift international action, leading 2 years later to the Montreal Protocol, which banned ozone-depleting chemicals. Scientists estimate that if nations continue following the agreement, the hole should heal completely within roughly a century, making it one of the clearer examples of global cooperation solving an environmental problem. Roughly what portion of the mid-ocean ridge system lies beneath the ocean? A. 70%. B. 50%. C. 99%. D. 90%. The answer is 90%. Being almost entirely submerged is why the ridge remained largely unmapped until sonar and satellite techniques revealed its true scale. The small visible portion above water, such as Iceland, hints at a much larger structure winding beneath every major ocean basin. In what year was gold discovered in the area now occupied by Denali National Park and Preserve? A. 1903. B. 1898. C. 1925. D. 1912. The answer is 1903. This early gold find led to decades of hard rock and placer mining activity in places such as the Dunkel Mine area and the Kantishna Hills. Traces of that era, including abandoned cabins, tailings, and old mine shafts, remain scattered through the park today, offering a glimpse into the region's mining history even as the sites are now managed with visitor safety in mind. What share of the world's fresh water is stored in Antarctica? A. 40%. B. 60%. C. 75%. D. 25%. The answer is 60%. Antarctica holds the majority of Earth's fresh water locked away as ice, far more than any lake, river, or aquifer combined. This makes the continent central to global sea level calculations, since even a small proportion of that ice melting would raise oceans significantly. It also explains why researchers treat the ice sheet as a critical piece of the planet's climate system. Mount St. Helens takes its English name from the title of which historical figure? A. Baron Rainier. B. Baron Hood. C. Baron St. Helens. D. Baron Vancouver. The answer is Baron St. Helens. The mountain was named by the British naval officer George Vancouver while he surveyed the Pacific coast in the 1790s in honour of a diplomat, Aline Fitzherbert, who held the title Baron St. Helens. Vancouver named several Cascade Peaks after British notables of his day. which is why so many of the range's mountains carry English titles rather than the names used by local indigenous peoples. What kind of volcano results when one oceanic plate subducts beneath another oceanic plate? A. An Andean-type volcano. B. A shield volcano. C. A continental rift volcano. D. An island arc volcano. The answer is an island arc volcano. Subduction zones produce different volcano types depending on which plates are involved. When two oceanic plates converge and one sinks beneath the other, the resulting volcanic chain rises from the seafloor as a line of islands. This contrasts with ocean continent subduction, which instead builds volcanoes directly on a continental margin, as seen in the Andes. About how long had it been since Halemaumau last held surface water, before its brief lake appeared in 2019? A. At least 200 years. B. At least 100 years. C. At least 500 years. D. At least 50 years. The answer is at least 200 years. A short-lived water lake appeared in the Halemaumau pit crater at Kilauea's summit from mid-2019 until December 2020, marking the first known surface water there in at least 2 centuries. The lake vanished almost instantly when a new eruption began, since the sudden heat vaporized the water rather than draining it away gradually. Under the geological principle of superposition, rock layers near the top of a stratigraphic column are generally what compared to the layers beneath them? A. Younger. B. Older. C. Denser. D. Softer. The answer is younger. Superposition works because sediment piles up over time, so whatever settles last ends up on top. This is why geologists read a stratigraphic column from bottom to top as a timeline, with the oldest material at the base. At the Grand Canyon, this principle helps explain why the ancient Inner Gorge rock sits far below the much younger Kaibab limestone at the rim. At which type of plate boundary do volcanoes typically fail to form, largely due to a lack of available magma? A. Hotspots. B. Constructive boundaries. C. Transform boundaries. D. Destructive boundaries. The answer is transform boundaries. Transform boundaries are where plates slide past one another without crust being created or destroyed. Because there is little tectonic pulling apart or pushing together, there is very little magma generated near the fault, so volcanoes rarely form along these margins, unlike at constructive or destructive boundaries or above hotspots. Which eruption has been studied through its dense rock equivalent volume to understand its effect on ancient Greek and Egyptian cultures? A. The eruption of Mount Vesuvius. B. The eruption of Krakatoa. C. The Minoan eruption of Thera at Santorini. D. The eruption of Mount Tambora. The answer is the Minoan eruption of Thera at Santorini. Pumice and ash deposits, including samples drawn from deep-sea cores, let researchers estimate how much rock the eruption threw out. The figures help archaeologists judge how the Bronze Age eruption may have shaped the civilizations around it. About how many caves are known within Crater Lake National Park? A. 40. B. 10. C. 70. D. 100. The answer is 40. Most of these caves formed through wave action at old lake levels inside the caldera, while a handful of other significant caves lie outside it. Some have held sensitive archaeological materials, and the park is also home to several bat species, though it remains uncertain whether the bats actually use these caves for shelter. Which lake is the deepest in the United States? A. Crater Lake. B. Great Salt Lake. C. Lake Superior. D. Lake Tahoe. The answer is Crater Lake. Crater Lake sits inside the collapsed caldera of the former volcano Mount Mazama, which erupted violently about 7,700 years ago. The caldera basin is more than a kilometer deep, and because the lake has no inlet or outlet, it fills almost entirely from snow and rain, keeping its water remarkably clear and blue. About how old are the oldest basement rocks exposed at the bottom of Grand Canyon? A. Nearly 2 billion years old. B. Roughly 100 million years old. C. 1,840,000,000 years old. D. Approximately 500 million years old. The answer is 1,840,000,000 years old. The Vishnu basement rocks at the canyon's base are among the oldest exposed rocks in the region, offering a rare window into the early history of the North American continent. Because outcrops of rock this old are uncommon on the Colorado Plateau, geologists compare them with similarly ancient rocks elsewhere to piece together how early continental crust formed. About how deep is the Grand Canyon? A. Nearly 1,000 meters. B. nearly 3,000 meters. C. Nearly 1,500 meters. D. Nearly 500 meters. The answer is nearly 1,500 meters. The canyon plunges to a depth of roughly 1,500 meters in places, making it one of the deepest gorges on the planet. Its width varies enormously along its length, ranging from just a few hundred meters in narrow sections to many kilometers across in the widest stretches, which is part of what gives the landscape its dramatic and varied scenery. How tall was Mount St. Helens before its elevation was reduced by the 1980 eruption? A. 8,364 feet. B. 10,211 feet. C. 7,942 feet. D. 9,677 feet. The answer is 9,677 feet. Before the eruption, Mount St. Helens stood at 9,677 feet, giving it the graceful, symmetrical profile that earned it the nickname the Fujiyama of America. The collapse of its north flank and the explosive blast that followed lowered the summit to 8,364 feet, physically reshaping the mountain in a matter of minutes. Where is the UK's Arctic Research Station located? A. Tromsø, Norway. B. Ny-Ålesund, Svalbard. C. Longyearbyen, Svalbard. D. Barentsburg, Svalbard. The answer is Ny-Ålesund, Svalbard. Ny-Ålesund is a small international research settlement in the Norwegian Arctic archipelago of Svalbard, chosen for its accessibility and proximity to glaciers, sea ice, and polar atmosphere for study. From this base, scientists track how oceanography, atmospheric chemistry, and sea ice dynamics are shifting in a region warming much faster than the global average. Recent research suggests which factor does the most damage in desertification, rather than low annual rainfall. A. Long-term temperature increases. B. Extreme weather such as heavy downpours. C. Overgrazing by livestock. D. Loss of soil nutrients from farming. The answer is extreme weather such as heavy downpours. Sudden, intense weather turns out to be more destructive than a simple shortage of rain. Heavy downpours trigger flash floods that strip soil away, and the distribution of rain across the year matters as much as the annual total. It is a marked shift from older land use explanations. Which two volcanoes does Hawaii Volcanoes National Park protect and study as some of the world's most active? A. Mauna Kea and Kilauea. B. Mauna Loa and Haleakala. C. Haleakala and Kilauea. D. Kilauea and Mauna Loa. The answer is Kilauea and Mauna Loa. The park exists specifically to protect and provide access to these two volcanic systems, which together span the park from coastline to summit. Their ongoing eruptive activity has shaped features like calderas, pit craters, and lava flow fields that define the landscape and continue to draw scientific study from the nearby Hawaiian Volcano Observatory. About how long is the annual circular migration trek across Serengeti and into Kenya? A. 1,000 kilometers. B. 200 kilometers. C. 500 kilometers. D. 1,500 kilometers. The answer is 1,000 kilometers. Wildebeest and other grazing animals travel this great looping distance each year, moving between Tanzania and Kenya in search of rain-fed grass and water. The journey is considered one of the largest unaltered migrations left on Earth, and its scale depends on the two countries' parks remaining connected without barriers blocking the route. What is the belt of high atmospheric pressure where hot desert climates occur called? A. The subtropical ridge. B. The polar vortex. C. The intertropical convergence zone. D. The temperate zone. The answer is the subtropical ridge. This high-pressure belt sits roughly between 30 degrees north and 30 degrees south. Descending dry air there suppresses rainfall and creates the great hot deserts, including the Sahara and the Arabian. It explains why deserts cluster at similar latitudes worldwide rather than appearing at random. Which two islands in the Galapagos are the youngest, formed less than 1 million years ago? A. Española and San Cristobal. B. Isabella and Fernandina. C. Santa Cruz and Floriana. D. Genovesa and Pinta. The answer is Isabella and Fernandina. Isabella and Fernandina are the largest and youngest islands in the chain, formed less than 1 million years ago, while Española and San Cristobal are among the oldest, dating back 3 to 5 million years. This age gradient reflects the westward drift of the underlying plate over a stationary volcanic hotspot. Who was Stephen Bishop, buried in the Old Guide Cemetery near Mammoth Cave? A. The founder of the Mammoth Cave Railroad. B. The first park ranger stationed at the cave. C. The physician who ran the consumption hospital. D. A famous enslaved cave explorer and guide. The answer is a famous enslaved cave explorer and guide. Stephen Bishop mapped and explored large sections of Mammoth Cave while enslaved, working under landowner Dr. John Croghan. His detailed knowledge of the passages made him one of the most important early guides, and his grave remains among the 21 in the historic Old Guide Cemetery alongside other guides and explorers. Which feature is the only post-caldera volcano to break the surface of Crater Lake? A. Hillman Peak. B. Mount Scott. C. Lau Rock. D. Wizard Island. The answer is Wizard Island. After Mount Mazama collapsed to form the caldera, several vents released lava onto the caldera floor, while the basin was slowly filling with water. Only one of these later eruptions built a cone tall enough to rise above the rising lake surface, and that cone is Wizard Island, now a small forested landmark visible near the caldera's western edge. About how tall is the upper falls of the Yellowstone River? A. 109 feet. B. 60 feet. C. 200 feet. D. 308 feet. The answer is 109 feet. The upper falls flows over rock similar in resistance to erosion as the rock beneath the lower falls, though it drops a shorter distance. Just upstream, remnants of an old lava flow that resisted erosion also shaped the riverbed, showing how ancient volcanic activity still guides the river's path today. That's all of them. Sleep well.